Welcome back, everybody. We're diving into a really fascinating and kind of tragic case today.
Yeah, definitely. Um,
Two unsolved murders that happened back in the summer of 1982 in Ogden, Utah.
Ogden, Utah.
Joyce Tina Gyos was 21 years old,
Hmm.
and then Gabrielle Dapano was only
Wait, I
14.
remember reading about these cases.
Yeah, and they seem completely unconnected at first,
Hmm.
but there are a lot of eerie similarities and a lot of missing information.
A lot of missing evidence.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the way they were killed.
right?
And the time frame, like it's a very
Yeah,
short period of time.
yeah, just days apart.
Very strange. Yeah.
So we're gonna try to unpack all of that today,
Uh-huh.
and hopefully maybe somebody listening has some information that could help.
Yeah, if you know anything about these cases, please reach out to the authorities.
Exactly.
Mm.
So let's start off by sort of painting a picture of who Tina and Gabby were.
Okay. So, Tina was 21 years old. She was described as kind of a free spirit. She was known to hitchhike around town. Uh,
She was last seen at a bus stop in downtown Ogden.
Right, and there was I think a few days before she disappeared, there was some kind of argument at that same bus stop.
Oh wow, so there's conflict right from the beginning.
Yeah, right away.
Yeah, and then Gabby.
Gabby was 14 years old. Spent a lot of time with her friends. At the bowling alley, that
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. So
Um,
totally different lives seemingly.
yeah, totally different.
But then their deaths are very similar and very mysterious.
Yeah, so Tina's body was found in the Ogden River. She had been shot twice in the head.
Wow.
And then Gabby's body was found a few days later, wrapped in a shower curtain and dumped in a ditch.
Oh my gosh.
And she had been shot once in the head.
And they think it was the same.
Well, they didn't think so at first,
Right.
but it turns out it was the same gun.
Okay, so right away we have these two young women killed in very similar ways, and then
And the police, they're looking at these cases and they're like, okay, are these connected? Is this the same person?
right, are these just like really tragic coincidences, or is this like a serial situation?
Exactly, and there's just not enough information to know.
Yeah, and then we have the problem of the missing evidence.
Oh my gosh, the missing evidence in these cases is unbelievable.
It's crazy, right?
I mean, we're not talking about like, oh, a file was misplaced or something.
Right.
We're talking about entire boxes of evidence gone.
Yeah, in Tina's case, it was the police reports.
Yeah, just gone.
The initial police reports just gone.
So the investigators are having to rely on the memories of the officers who worked the case 40 years ago.
Right, and memories are
They're not reliable.
not reliable, not at all.
And then in Gabby's case, it's even worse.
Yeah,
Clothing, a towel, blood samples,
all gone.
gone.
Poof.
There's this theory that maybe there was a flood
At the police station.
at the Harrisville Police Department
Yeah,
and that the evidence was destroyed in the flood, but nobody knows for sure.
that's crazy to me.
It's insane.
That crucial evidence in a murder investigation could just disappear like that.
I mean, I've heard of that happening before,
Really?
but it's not common.
Yeah, it just seems so unbelievable.
It is unbelievable, but it happens.
So with all this missing evidence,
Mm.
you know, it's a wonder that they had any leads to follow at all.
Yeah, well, in Tina's case, there was a guy named Raymond
Yeah.
who had briefly dated her, and he was actually arrested for her murder
Oh, wow.
based on a confession that he supposedly made.
To an undercover cop.
Yeah, to an undercover narcotics officer.
I remember reading about that.
But here's the thing, this officer,
This is where it gets weird.
this is where it gets really strange. This officer had a criminal record himself,
Yeah.
and Raymond had a solid alibi.
So what was this cop's motive?
I don't know, was he lying? Was he trying to frame Raymond?
Was there pressure to make an arrest?
Maybe they just really wanted to close the case.
Yeah. Sometimes that happens.
So they ended up dropping the charges against Raymond.
Right back to square one.
Back to square one.
Yeah. And then Gabby's case is just a whole other mess.
Oh, yeah.
There were these two runaway girls.
Chloe and Brooke.
Right.
They were friends with Gabby, and they initially said that Sammy Mora,
Gabby's ex-boyfriend.
yeah, Gabby's ex-boyfriend, that he had killed her.
Yeah. They said they were at a party with him.
They were at a party at his house.
Yeah.
And that he had killed Gabby there.
And then they changed their story.
They did, and they said that they had memory problems.
Yeah. One of them even said that she had witnessed the murder.
Right.
And then she was like, oh, no, that was a false memory.
I was from a brain injury. Yeah.
It's like, come on.
I mean, it's hard to know what to believe.
Right.
I mean, these girls were going through a lot.
Yeah, they were runaways. They were, who knows what they were into.
Exactly.
But then there were also a couple other guys who were linked to Gabby.
Yeah, Pete Romero?
Yeah, his car had blood and hair in it.
Supposedly.
Supposedly.
And
But,
it didn't match Gabby.
okay, so that was a dead end.
Dead end. And then there was Larry Lucero, who drove a red car.
And there were witnesses who had seen a red car
Right.
at the bowling alley
Near the bowling alley. Yeah.
the night that Gabby disappeared.
Right.
So he was a suspect for a while, too.
He was, but they gave him a polygraph, and he passed, and they just couldn't connect him to the crime.
So it's like they had all these possible suspects,
Right.
but not enough evidence to charge anybody.
And they tried to use informants to get more information, but nobody was talking.
So we have these 2 unsolved murders,
2 beautiful young women just gone,
a ton of missing evidence.
and a bunch of suspects with shaky stories.
Right, so you can see why these cases went cold for so long.
It's a mystery.
But then in 2008, there was a huge breakthrough.
Ballistics.
Yeah, ballistics testing showed that the bullets that killed Tina and Gabby came from the same gun.
So suddenly these 2 seemingly unrelated cases are connected.
Yeah, so now it looks like we might have a serial killer on our hands.
Yeah, and that just raises the stakes even higher. It makes you wonder how many other victims might be out there.
Oh, gosh, yeah. So you think, okay, now with this new information, they're going to be able to use DNA testing to crack the case wide open, right?
Well, they found some DNA on a joint that was in Tina's purse,
Yep.
but the sample was too small to be uploaded to any databases or to be used for a direct comparison.
Oh, man. So close.
So close, but no cigar.
But they didn't give up, right?
No, they collected DNA samples from Sammy and Pete and Larry.
Hoping that maybe someday the technology would catch up.
Right, and now with the advancements in DNA analysis, that hope is becoming a reality.
Yeah, there's this company called DNA Labs International.
They can do some amazing things with DNA.
Yeah, they can generate a full DNA profile from a really tiny sample.
And Detective Haney, the detective who's currently working the case, he got a grant to use their services.
Wow, so that's promising.
Very promising.
Yeah, it seems like they're finally getting somewhere with these cases.
I hope so.
Me too. But there's also something else that Detective Haney mentioned.
What's that?
A brand new lead.
Oh, wow.
He didn't go into details, but he said it could be a game changer.
Really?
Yeah, so we're going to have to wait and see what that's all about.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Me too. So we're going to take a break here, and we'll be back in a bit to talk more about these cases.
That sounds good.
And we'll also talk about, the impact that these unsolved murders have had on the families.
Yes, and the community as a whole.
So stay tuned. It's easy to get caught up in all the twists and turns of a case like this.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that these were real people,
Absolutely.
with families and friends who loved them.
Right. Tina and Gabby, they were daughters. They were sisters.
Yeah.
They had hopes and dreams.
And their lives were cut tragically short.
And their families have been living with this pain for over 40 years?
Yeah, not knowing who did it.
Yeah.
Not having any closure.
It's just unimaginable.
It really is. And I think sometimes the way victims are portrayed in the media
Oh, yeah.
can kind of dehumanize them, especially in cases like this where there's not a lot of information available.
Right. People start to speculate.
Right. And they fill in the blanks with their own assumptions.
And sometimes those assumptions can be really harmful.
Yeah, like with Tina.
Right. The fact that she hitchhiked,
Yeah.
that became like a defining characteristic.
Right, like, oh, she was asking for it.
Exactly. And that's just not fair.
No, it's
No
not.
victim blaming.
And it's important to remember that regardless of her choices,
Yeah.
she was a victim of a violent crime.
And so is Gabby.
Yeah. And their families deserve answers.
They do.
So, even though these cases have been cold for so long,
Mm-hmm.
there are people who haven't given up on them.
Right, like Sergeant Van Orton.
Yeah, she was a detective who worked on these cases for years.
Years and years.
She really dedicated her career to trying to solve them.
And she never gave up hope.
And now there's Detective Haney.
Yeah, he's the one who got the grant for the DNA testing.
Right. And he's the one who's following up on that new lead.
The game changer.
Yeah. So there's still hope.
There's always hope.
And, it's not just law enforcement who's working on these cases.
Right.
There are organizations like Season of Justice.
Oh, yeah. Founded by Ashley Flowers.
Yeah. They help fund DNA testing for cold cases.
And they provide support to families of victims.
It's really amazing what they do.
It
And it
is.
shows that even though these cases are old,
Yeah.
people still care.
They do. And they're still trying to find answers.
And that's really important because sometimes that's all the families have left.
hope.
Yeah. Hope that someday they'll know what happened to their loved ones.
And that the person who did this will be held accountable.
Exactly.
It's been so long.
Yeah, over 40 years.
And sometimes you wonder if it's even possible to solve a case after all this time.
But then you see cases like this,
Right.
where there's new evidence,
New technology,
new leads.
and it gives you hope.
Yeah, it's like the truth is still out there.
It is.
We just have to find it.
And sometimes it takes a village.
Yeah, it takes law enforcement.
Scientists.
Journalists and everyday people like us.
Right, people who are willing to come forward with information.
Because you never know what little detail
Mm.
could be the key to solving the case.
It could be something that you think is insignificant,
Right.
but to the investigators, it could be the missing piece of the puzzle.
So if you know anything about Tina or Gabby's murders,
Anything at all.
please contact the authorities.
You could help bring closure to these families.
And you could help bring a killer to justice. It's
Yeah.
just, it's really mind-boggling to me that
Mhm.
cases like this can go unsolved for so long.
I know, it really makes you question, like,
Yeah.
what's going on?
Yeah, like how is this possible
You would think,
with all the technology and resources that we have today?
right,
You know?
that we would be able to solve these crimes.
Right.
But the reality is that there are thousands of cold cases out there.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is just that there are so many.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Yeah. And you know, cold cases are not a priority for a lot of police departments.
They don't have the resources.
Right. They're focused on the crimes that are happening right now.
Yeah, and that's understandable.
Right. But it's still frustrating.
Oh, absolutely, especially for the families.
Yeah, because for them, it's not a cold case.
Right, it's still very real.
Yeah, it's still an open wound.
And you know, we talked about the missing evidence.
Yeah, how does that even happen?
I don't know, it's mind-boggling.
Like, you would think that evidence in a murder investigation would be...
It should be like the most protected thing.
Exactly.
But somehow it just disappears.
And then there's the issue of witnesses.
Yeah, memories fade.
People move away.
People die.
Right.
It's hard to track people down after all these years.
Yeah. And sometimes people are just afraid to come forward.
Right. They might be scared of retaliation.
Yeah, or they might be protecting someone.
Yeah. So it's a really complex issue.
It is. And there are no easy answers.
But I think the important thing is to keep talking about these cases.
Yeah, to keep them in the public eye.
Because you never know, someone out there might have a piece of information
Right.
that could break the case wide open.
Even if they don't think it's important.
Right. It might seem insignificant to them.
Yeah. But to the investigators, it could be the missing link.
So if you know anything about Tina or Gabby's murders,
Yeah.
no matter how small,
Please reach out to the authorities.
don't hesitate.
You could be the one to finally bring these families some peace.
That's right.
You know, it's been a
Sure.
really heavy conversation today,
Yeah, it is a tough subject.
but it's an important one.
Definitely.
And I think it's important to remember that even in the face of tragedy,
Yeah,
there's always hope.
there is.
And we can't give up on the pursuit of justice.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a good place to end our deep dive today.
Okay.
So thank you for joining us,
Thank you.
and we'll see you next time.
See you later.